Hello everybody, my name is Johan Flores and I'm more than delighted to share with you my presentation about error analysis. This presentation encompasses 4 moments. First of all, I will provide the meaning and the importance of error analysis. Secondly, error analysis theory will be presented. Thirdly, the most common sources of errors. And finally, I will present an error analysis grid with the possible remediations. Okay, so let's start. So what is error analysis? Error analysis is a technique that teachers and researchers implement to identify those errors that are commonly evidenced in foreign language learners' texts. So the important is that error analysis is a fundamental method within the teaching and learning process, since it allows learners to be aware of those errors that they have committed in that target language. Also, it allows teachers to observe this process and how learners overcome these errors. Similarly, researchers can analyze how the language is being acquired. So now, let's take a look at the steps in analyzing learners' errors. Ellis 1994 described 5 steps of error analysis suggested by Corder 1974. So to carry out an error analysis, it is indispensable to consider the following steps. The first step is basically it's basically to gather that information that we want to analyze in order to determine patterns of error utterances. The second step is the identification of errors, and the third step is the description by taking into account Corder taxonomy, who identified 3 types. So later on we are going to be focused on it. The first step is called is the explanation of those sources of those errors, okay, in order to find the reasons for the learner's error. Finally, to evaluate those errors by giving some remediations, okay. So in this step, it's important to assess that text. Now I want to be focused on the description step. So Corder identified 3 types, as I said before. The first type is called presystematic. They are those errors that learners were not aware of the existence of particular rules. The second one is called systematic. They are those errors that occur when the learners had the understanding of the rule, but the rule was an incorrect one. And the third one is called post-systematic. Post-systematic errors occur when the learners produced errors and they are unconscious of them, even when they have understood the rules. So now let's take a look at the sources of errors. The 2 main sources of errors are intralingual and interlingual. Interlingual errors come from the interference from the first language, and intralingual errors, according to Richard 1974, they are the result of learners' creativity. Once I have provided this important information, I'm going to present to you, or I'm going to present the chosen text that I analyzed. So this is a written production that learners were required to develop, and it is about a summary of a Simpsons episode called Simpsorama. So as you can see here, I have already highlighted those errors and mistakes that this student has committed. So now let's take a look at the error analysis grid that I have developed. I identified 2 mistakes in the title section. As you can see here, the student has forgotten to add an important element of this word, which is summary. He forgot to add double M, and this is a mistake because the student knows this word but he misspelled it, okay. So the classification of error is orthographic and source, and the source of this error is intralingual because it comes from the learner's creativity, and omission because it's missing that consonant. The remediation that I suggest is, I suggest the following activities. First of all, to review the vocabulary, and secondly, it's important to play to hang out men. It allows the learner to know the letters of a word, and it can encourage him. In the first line, student wrote, "The Simpson family were in their home." The error correction is, the Simpson family was at home. This is a mistake because he already knows how to use the past simple of the verb to be, and this is a morphosyntax error because it is a misformation of the subject-verb agreement, so it doesn't correspond to family. Where does not correspond to family. So the remediation, I suggest to review the past simple of the verb to be and to create a text telling a past event, because he used he used were instead of was. So also he wrote, the Simpson family were in their home. In the error correction, the correction is the Simpson family was at home. This is our error, and this is from the syntactic level, since a learner knows how to write, knows prepositions of time, of place, preposition of place, and he used in instead of at. And this is an interlingual error over generalization, because he used a rule that is applied in different cases, and addition of there, because this possessive pronoun doesn't belong here. And feedback, review the preposition of place in on at, depending on the context. The learner has to choose the right preposition of place. In the first line, the learner wrote, when suddenly a mechanic robot arrived, saying. The error correction is when suddenly, comma, a mechanic robot. So this is a mistake because he already knows how to use those punctuation marks, and he forgot it. So the classification of this error is orthographic, and the source of error is intralingual omission, because it's missing this important element. This is the punctuation mark, which is the comma. And I suggest to review the punctuation marks when they are followed by an adverb, because suddenly it's mandatory to use this comma after this adverb. Insert the necessary punctuation marks in a text. So similarly, he wrote, when suddenly a mechanic robot arrived, saying. The error correction is when suddenly, comma, a mechanic robot showed up or even appeared, and he said. This is an error because because this is the classification of this error is semantic, because it doesn't have sense, and the source of this error is intralingual, because he doesn't know how to use it, and confusion of the context. I suggest to practice on words or on those synonyms, and learner is required to choose the correct word that fits to the text regarding the context. In the second line, he wrote, he coming of the future. The error correction is he came from the future. And the classification of this error is morphosyntax, because he didn't use the right time tense, okay? Because he used coming instead of the past tense of the verb to come, which is came. And this is a mistake because he already knows how to use the past simple tense. And the classification of this error is intralingual misformation derivation, because he used he placed a morpheme ing where it doesn't fit or doesn't belong. And remediation, I suggest to review verbs that are followed by infinitive and gerund. Similarly, he wrote he coming of the future. And the error correction is he came from the future. This is a mistake, and the classification of this is syntactic, because he's having problems with prepositions, okay? And the source of this is interlingual, first language interference, and so for that reason I suggest to review the differences between from and of. I suggest this activity. A matching exercise can be suggested to enhance this aspect. Learner has to draw a line to match the sentence and the preposition from and of. Okay, in the third line, it's evidenced 4 mistakes related to orthographic, morphological level, syntax, lexical, and orthographic. Okay, so as you can see here, he wrote Homer Simpson, but he doesn't do it. So the error correction is Homer Simpson, comma, but he didn't do it. This is the classification of this error is morphological, because he is using a time tense instead of another one, which is the past simple, okay, the auxiliary of the, which is did, okay. and he used does. This is a mistake because he already knows how to use the past simple tense, and the source of error is intralingual and misformation of verb tense. I suggest to review the use of past simple tense. Also, as an activity, I suggest to write a short text in which learner has to describe any event that happened in the past. Okay, in that way he will enhance it. In the same third line, he wrote, the name of the was Bender. The error correction is, the robot's name was Bender. So this is a mistake because he already knows how to use capital letters and punctuation marks. So for that, the classification is orthographic, and the source of it is intralingual, and the incomplete application of the rule because missing this capital letter, and subject's capitalization, Bender with B, and punctuation mark, which is the period. Okay, he used the comma instead of period. So for that reason, I suggest to review when to use capital letters, read a text that contains several errors, then identify by circling the letters that need to be capitalized. Okay, in the fourth line is evidenced 2 morphosyntax errors and 1 syntax. So let's take a look at this one, at this sentence that he wrote. The horrific creatures, they go to destroy New York. So the error correction is horrific creatures that went to destroy New York. So as you can see here, this article was unnecessary. So the source of so that this is a mistake, and the source of this error is intralingual because it directly comes from the target language, and addition because he wrote the article the, which was not necessary, and overgeneralization because he thought that we always use this definite article in all cases. Okay, so I suggest to review when to use this article, review when not to use the definite article, so things in general, names of holidays, countries, etc. I hope that you have liked this video, so see you next time.